Mitch McConnell should have challenged that election, because even back then we had plenty of material to challenge that election. He should have challenged the election. Schumer would have challenged the election.
Former President Trump will be in Georgia Saturday for a rally. He's supporting 6 candidates, including a Republican primary challenge to the sitting governor. Much of Trump's pitch and those of his endorsees center around claims that Trump actually won in 2020. Those claims did not work out so well for Republicans David Perdue, now running for governor, and Kelly Loeffler, who got beat in a Senate runoff election last year. Trump used many of those same talking points at their rallies. Georgia votes in their primary election May 24th. The success or failure of Trump's picks will say a lot about his influence over the GOP. The Peach State's lieutenant governor says it's time to move on from Trump. Republican Geoff Duncan is running ads ahead of the weekend rally.
But some politicians would rather talk about conspiracy theories and past losses, letting liberal extremists take us in the wrong direction. A mistake our country simply can't afford. We must focus on the future and rebuild our party.
Lieutenant Governor is not running for re-election and joins us now. If you were running for re-election, could you be as outspoken as you are?
Absolutely. It's the right thing to do. You know, doing the right thing is never the wrong thing.
Fair enough. You seem to lay out this conundrum that Republicans face, which is, and I'm trying to just make sure I would get your warning right, if Trump acolytes who run on 2020 conspiracy theories are nominated, more Democrats will win.
Absolutely. It's a very simple equation. We simplify it for the Democrats if we focus on the 2020 election cycle. It's unfortunate, it's embarrassing, and quite honestly, it's predictable. It absolutely hurts us to talk about the 2020 election, because I think an overwhelming majority of Georgians and Americans, for that fact, are really concerned when they wake up about the big issues, about inflation, about the border, about national security, all the big issues that absolutely matter to everybody's households are what we should be talking about. It's what Donald Trump should be talking about. If he truly cares about this country, he should be talking about something that Joe Biden's doing wrong, not what went on in 2020 during the election cycle.
Okay, follow this out one more step. President Trump won in 2016 against all odds. He beat 17 Republicans following his gut. How do we know that running on these issues isn't going to work?
Well, one, it doesn't help us, right? There's no solutions wrapped up in what Donald Trump's doing right now. I mean, just think about the mixed message that Georgians are hearing. The last time Donald Trump was here in Georgia, he told a crowd full of Republicans that they should vote for Stacey Abrams. Now he's going to tell a crowd full of Republicans that they should vote for David Perdue. I got an idea. Why doesn't he tell a crowd full of Republicans to vote for Brian Kemp, the most conservative governor in Georgia's history, somebody who's navigated us through the pandemic, 2.6% unemployment. I mean, this guy is a conservative rock star. But instead, he's going to try to shelter his ego and call on everybody else out in the crowd to talk about conspiracy theories. It's wrong, it's misguided, and it's the wrong pathway forward.
I feel like you're sort of saying that if President Trump continues to be a powerful voice in the Republican Party as he exists today, Republicans are doomed in the midterms.
Well, I think the midterms are going to be, there's going to continue to be chaos on the battlefield, but it's not the long-term goals. If we're just going to keep talking about 2020, we're going to get the same outcomes. I mean, think about what he just did to Mo Brooks. He just unendorsed Mo Brooks, right? He just picked him up on a pedestal and then dropped him because he was a couple of, he's double digits behind. He was fundraising was terrible. Exactly the same scenario that David Perdue's in right now. He's going to get on stage this weekend and, and do his Trump thing with David Perdue. I wouldn't doubt it if he doesn't drop him and unendorse him when he realizes he's 10 or 15 points behind.
Yeah, no, it's a great point in terms of who knows sort of how this ends for Trump nominees. It goes back to something Bari Weiss was talking about in terms of sort of the lack of seriousness that we have in American politics. We are and have been for a while now in a culture war, paraphrasing, and it is one that we, heirs to the Enlightenment and the American experiment, are losing very badly. We are losing because we are unserious. We have forgotten how to ask the hard questions. I'm wondering if sort of things have to get much worse and Republicans have to sort of go through the wilderness that the Democrats went through, say, in 1982 and 1984 to be able to come back.
I hope that's not the case. I hope we just wake up from the stupor and we move on. We just simply focus on the future instead of the past. That's the answer here. That's the least painful answer for us, right? Because there's real problems out there. This country faces real challenges, and Joe Biden should be making it easy for us. But instead, we're trying to complicate it. Look, there's going to be a new crop of leaders that continue to rise up. Every metric we're looking at shows Donald Trump's support starting to decline, continuing to decline. And by the time we get to 2024, we'll have a new Republican nominee. Hopefully, it's somebody with a vision that's able to really paint the future of America and convince not only the right, but the middle to come our way and to get this country back on track. That's my goal.
Well, it is an interesting prediction. Many have predicted the end of Donald Trump. I didn't understand the movement in 2016 and was taught some lessons, but you make some great points. It's good to see you, and obviously you're putting your political career on the line to do it. It's good to see you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Leland. Have a good night.
All the best. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.